Let's be honest from the very beginning. If there is one kind of narcissist that leaves people the most confused and emotionally shattered, it is the covert narcissist. Curious. They are not the loud, attention-hungry personalities most people imagine when they hear the word narcissist. They don't dominate every conversation, demand constant praise, or openly show their arrogance. Instead, they survive by hiding behind an image that appears kind, gentle, and trustworthy. They blend into your world so naturally that you never see the danger coming. They become the friend who always seems available when you need someone to talk to. They present themselves as the caring partner who appears deeply devoted to the relationship. Sometimes they are the compassionate counselor, the generous volunteer, or the humble person who never asks for recognition. Size. Everything about them seems sincere. They don't appear threatening. In fact, they often seem like one of the safest people you could ever meet. That is exactly what makes them so dangerous. The kindness they display is often carefully designed rather than genuinely felt. Their warmth has a purpose. Their compassion becomes a tool. Every thoughtful gesture, every comforting conversation, and every act of generosity may be serving one hidden objective: to gain something from you. That reward could be your loyalty, your admiration, your financial support, your time, or complete emotional influence over your decisions. What looks like unconditional care is often a carefully built strategy. The most disturbing part of dealing with a covert narcissist is the enormous difference between who they appear to be and who they really are. Everyone around them sees a patient, selfless, and compassionate individual. Behind closed doors, however, they can become emotionally destructive in ways that slowly drain the life out of another person. They rarely attack in obvious ways. Instead, they rely on subtle tactics that are much harder to recognize. They use quiet guilt, passive-aggressive comments, emotional manipulation, and constant psychological pressure that slowly wears down your confidence. Little by little, you begin questioning your own thoughts and feelings. Your self-esteem fades so gradually that you hardly notice it happening. Because everyone believes they are such a wonderful person, including you at the beginning, you constantly dismiss your own instincts. Every uncomfortable feeling gets explained away. You tell yourself you must have misunderstood. Maybe they were just stressed. Maybe you are being too sensitive. Maybe you are expecting too much. Without realizing it, you begin defending the very person who is quietly damaging your emotional well-being. You become trapped inside the image they worked so hard to create. Eventually, maintaining that perfect performance becomes impossible. No one can wear a mask forever. Sooner or later, cracks begin to appear, and the carefully constructed personality falls apart. When that moment finally arrives, the emotional shock is overwhelming. It isn't simply disappointment. It feels like your entire reality has collapsed overnight. The caring, thoughtful person you believed you knew suddenly disappears, revealing someone emotionally cold, calculating, and strangely indifferent to the pain they have caused. It feels as though a complete stranger has replaced the person you trusted. That realization creates intense psychological confusion. You replay months or even years of memories, wondering which moments were genuine and which ones were nothing more than an elaborate performance. You question your judgment, your instincts, and even your own ability to recognize truth. One painful question keeps echoing in your mind: how did I not see this? Many survivors immediately blame themselves. They feel embarrassed for believing the lies. They convince themselves they should have recognized the warning signs much sooner, but that conclusion is deeply unfair. If you have been manipulated, used, or completely blindsided by a covert narcissist, this is something you need to hear. Stop attacking yourself. Stop replaying every conversation, searching for the exact moment you think you failed. Stop believing that your trust was evidence of weakness. You are not foolish, you are not gullible, and you are certainly not broken. One of the first emotional reactions after the mask falls is self-blame. You become angry at yourself instead of the person who deceived you. But that response ignores one important reality. Covert narcissists become incredibly skilled at hiding their true nature. Deception isn't simply something they occasionally do. It becomes the foundation of how they survive and maintain control. If the people around them saw the insecurity, manipulation, and emotional emptiness hidden beneath their carefully crafted humility, the image they depend on would disappear almost instantly. Their reputation would collapse, and with it, the influence they worked so hard to build. That is why they invest so much energy into maintaining the illusion. They understand that the mask is their greatest weapon. As long as people continue believing the story they created, they remain protected. And by the time that illusion finally breaks, the emotional damage has often already been done. That is why healing begins the moment you stop blaming yourself and finally recognize that you weren't defeated by love. You were deceived by someone who made deception their entire identity. Welcome to Narcissist Recovery. If you'd like, I can also rewrite the next section in the same style so the entire script stays consistent. If people ever saw the person hiding beneath that carefully crafted image, everything they worked so hard to build could disappear overnight. Their friendships, family relationships, social reputation, and carefully protected status all depend on one thing: keeping the illusion alive. That is why many covert narcissists spend years, sometimes even a lifetime, refining their ability to appear caring, humble, and trustworthy. This is why you should never think of what happened as an equal battle. You weren't dealing with someone who played by the normal rules of honesty and mutual respect. You crossed paths with someone who had spent years learning how to use kindness as a weapon and trust as a doorway into another person's life. It's also important to understand something that many survivors overlook. A covert narcissist didn't choose you because you were weak or unintelligent. Quite the opposite. They were drawn to the qualities that make you a genuinely good human being. They look for people who naturally care about others. They seek out those who are compassionate, forgiving, patient, and willing to see the best in everyone. Your empathy becomes something they can manipulate. Your willingness to give second chances becomes an opportunity they exploit. If you've experienced emotional neglect, difficult childhood experiences, low confidence, or a habit of putting everyone else's needs before your own, they often recognize those patterns surprisingly quickly. They know exactly how to use those emotional wounds to their advantage. They encourage you to keep sacrificing, keep compromising, and keep proving yourself until you're giving far more than you ever receive. Over time, they become experts at making you feel responsible for problems they created. They know how to trigger guilt with remarkable precision. They convince you that you're not loving enough, patient enough, or supportive enough, leaving you constantly trying to earn approval that was never meant to be freely given. The painful truth is that you entered the relationship expecting honesty, trust, and genuine connection. They entered it with an entirely different objective. While you believed you were building a healthy bond, they were calculating emotional leverage. How can you blame yourself for missing rules that nobody told you existed? Every moment you spend attacking yourself, questioning your intelligence, or calling yourself foolish, you're continuing the emotional damage they worked so hard to create. Throughout the relationship, they slowly chipped away at your confidence, hoping you would doubt your own instincts. If you're still criticizing yourself today, their influence hasn't completely ended. People who feel worthless rarely challenge abuse. People who constantly question themselves are easier to control. That's exactly why they work so hard to make you doubt your own reality. Now is the time to show yourself the compassion you've been giving everyone else. You were not wrong for believing someone who appeared loving and sincere. The wrongdoing belongs to the person who deliberately pretended to be someone they were not. Release the guilt you've been carrying. Stop treating your kindness as if it were a flaw. Your trusting nature isn't proof that something is wrong with you. It simply means another person chose to exploit qualities that should have been respected instead of abused. You are not damaged, you are not foolish, and you are certainly not responsible for another person's deception. You survived an experience that many intelligent, caring people have also endured. That doesn't make you weak. It means you're finally beginning to see the truth clearly. Once that truth finally sinks in, another emotion often appears with incredible force: anger. Not ordinary frustration, but deep, justified anger. Suddenly you want everyone to know who this person really is. You imagine exposing every lie, confronting every manipulation, and pulling away the mask they've spent years protecting. You may feel an overwhelming urge to stand in front of them, present every piece of evidence, and demand they admit everything they've done. As understandable as that impulse is, acting on it can place you in an even more dangerous position. Resist the temptation to confront them too soon. Don't reveal that you figured them out, especially if other people are present. Instead, remain calm, protect your plans, and quietly prepare your next steps before showing your hand. This isn't about fear, it's about strategy. You have to remember what is truly at stake for them. Their public identity isn't simply important, it is the foundation holding their entire world together. Their career, relationships, reputation, and sense of importance all depend on maintaining the image they've carefully built over many years. The moment they realize someone can see behind that image, they often experience what mental health professionals describe as a narcissistic injury. To them, exposure doesn't feel like criticism. It feels like an attack on their entire identity. Don't expect accountability or genuine remorse. Don't expect an honest conversation where they acknowledge your pain or sincerely apologize. Much more often, they respond by protecting themselves at any cost. Their priority becomes destroying your credibility before you have the chance to speak. They may deny everything, twist your words, rewrite history, or launch a campaign designed to make other people question your stability instead of questioning their behavior. Covert narcissists are particularly skilled at presenting themselves as the wounded party. They can reverse the roles so smoothly that even people who know both of you may struggle to see what actually happened. Long before you explain your experience, they may already be telling mutual friends, relatives, or coworkers that you're overly emotional, unstable, vindictive, or imagining things. Their goal isn't simply to defend themselves, it's to make sure no one believes you when you finally decide to tell the truth. If you continue sending the remaining sections, I'll keep rewriting them in the same consistent style so the entire script reads as one original, cohesive piece. They often take your completely understandable reactions to their manipulation and use them as evidence that something is wrong with you. If you become emotional after months of being ignored, criticized, or manipulated, they point to your pain as if it proves you are unstable. In conversations with other people, they speak in a calm, concerned voice, claiming they are worried about your emotional well-being. It sounds compassionate on the surface, but underneath it is a carefully planned attempt to paint you as irrational, overly emotional, or mentally unwell. Behind closed doors, the pressure becomes even more intense. They distort your reality, deny things they clearly said or did, make subtle threats, and create an atmosphere where you begin doubting your own memory. After enough of this psychological pressure, many people become emotionally drained. They stop arguing, stop defending themselves, and sometimes even apologize simply because they want the conflict to end. That is exactly what the covert narcissist wants. You cannot win an argument with someone who has no interest in honesty. When truth no longer matters, facts alone cannot protect you. If you try exposing them publicly before you are prepared, they may use your frustration as another opportunity to strengthen their image while making you appear unreasonable. Many covert narcissists surround themselves with people who fully believe the version of themselves they present to the world. Those supporters often defend them without hesitation because they have only seen the carefully rehearsed personality. When accusations surface, these individuals may quickly dismiss your experience while repeating the narcissist's version of events. Wanting justice is completely understandable. Wanting someone to finally acknowledge what happened is a natural human response. But searching for validation from the very person who caused the damage usually leads to even greater emotional pain. Protect your energy instead. Accept that they may never admit the truth, never apologize sincerely, and never validate what you experienced. Your healing does not depend on receiving their confession. It depends on reclaiming your peace. The greatest victory is often much quieter than people imagine. Instead of trying to destroy their public image, remove yourself from the emotional game entirely. Stop providing the attention, reactions, and emotional investment they depend upon. Leave them alone with the false identity they worked so hard to build while you begin rebuilding your own life. Once you understand that dramatic confrontations usually work in their favor, your entire approach changes. Rather than planning the perfect speech or waiting for the ideal moment to expose everything, focus on creating a thoughtful and private exit. Silence becomes a form of protection. If you're preparing to leave a friendship, end a marriage, separate from a partner, or untangle yourself from any toxic relationship, make your preparations quietly. Organize your finances, secure important documents, make living arrangements, and strengthen relationships with people you genuinely trust. Handle these steps privately without announcing your intentions. Avoid making threats you don't intend to carry out. Don't hint that you're leaving. Don't reveal your strategy before you're ready. Leaving quietly is not surrender, it's wisdom. If you try tearing away their carefully maintained image during a separation or legal dispute, you may unintentionally trigger an even more aggressive response. Once they realize they're losing influence over you, the pleasant personality they've shown for so long can disappear remarkably fast. At that point, protecting themselves becomes their highest priority. Some may distort facts, spread false stories, manipulate financial situations, recruit mutual friends or relatives to their side, or reshape the entire narrative until they appear innocent and you become the villain. Their goal is not fairness, their goal is preserving control. For those who struggle with codependency or who are healing from earlier emotional wounds, this kind of psychological battle can feel especially overwhelming. People with compassionate hearts often believe that if they simply explain themselves clearly enough, everything can be resolved. They long for understanding, closure, and reconciliation. The narcissist recognizes that desire and repeatedly uses it against them. You don't protect yourself by staying in a battle designed to exhaust you. You protect yourself by stepping away before the fight consumes what's left of your emotional strength. Even after you've chosen a quiet exit, expect them to notice the change. Covert narcissists are often extremely sensitive to any sign that they are losing influence. They notice when you stop seeking their approval. They recognize when your attention fades, when you no longer rush to reassure them, or when your emotional reactions become smaller and less predictable. To them, this isn't simply distance. It feels like losing control. Because their self-worth depends so heavily on outside validation, your emotional independence creates enormous internal anxiety. yet they rarely respond with dramatic outbursts that everyone can see. Open displays of rage would damage the carefully protected image they've spent years creating. Instead, they usually rely on far more subtle methods. You may notice long stretches of icy silence, emotionally distant behavior, sarcastic compliments disguised as praise, exaggerated sighs, or small actions designed to make you wonder what you've done wrong. They create tension without directly addressing it, hoping you'll become uncomfortable enough to chase them for answers. The moment you ask what's happening, the roles often reverse. Suddenly, they present themselves as the wounded one. They speak calmly while portraying you as overly reactive. Some even borrow psychological terms, therapy language, or intellectual explanations to make their manipulation sound reasonable. They analyze your personality, criticize your boundaries, and confidently explain to others that your attempts to protect yourself are actually proof that you're selfish, unstable, or emotionally unhealthy. This is one of the clearest forms of psychological projection. The very behaviors they refuse to acknowledge within themselves are quietly assigned to you, leaving you defending accusations that never truly belonged to you in the first place. Welcome to Narcissist Recovery. A covert narcissist has an extraordinary ability to project their own behavior onto someone else. The manipulation, selfishness, dishonesty, and emotional cruelty they refuse to acknowledge within themselves suddenly become accusations aimed directly at you. They quietly reverse the roles until you begin defending yourself against actions that were never yours in the first place. To everyone watching from the outside, they appear calm, patient, and endlessly understanding. They present themselves as the person who has been carrying the relationship while gently trying to help someone they claim is struggling. Meanwhile, you're left looking reactive, unstable, or impossible to please. It's one of the oldest manipulation tactics they use, and unfortunately, it's often incredibly convincing to people who haven't witnessed the abuse behind closed doors. If there's one lesson that can save you months or even years of emotional exhaustion, it's this. Stop trying to convince a covert narcissist with logic. Most emotionally healthy people believe that honest communication solves problems. We assume that if we calmly explain our feelings, provide evidence, or walk through events step by step, the other person will eventually understand our perspective. That approach works with people who genuinely value truth. It does not work with someone whose primary goal is protecting their false identity. Every attempt to reason with them usually becomes another endless conversation that goes nowhere. You explain. They deny. You clarify. They change the subject. You present proof. They rewrite history. Hours disappear while you desperately search for understanding, yet the finish line never gets any closer. The reason is simple. You're trying to solve a problem using honesty while the other person is using manipulation. While you're investing your emotional energy into meaningful conversations, they're often investing their energy somewhere entirely different. They may already be telling their version of the story to friends, relatives, coworkers, or anyone willing to listen. Some carefully build sympathy long before you realize what's happening. Others create elaborate narratives that protect their reputation while quietly damaging yours. Winning isn't their objective. Control is. Trying to defeat a covert narcissist through arguments is like stepping into a contest where only one person has agreed to follow the rules. No matter how carefully you prepare, you'll eventually find yourself emotionally drained while they continue moving the goalposts. There's an old saying about wrestling with the pig in the mud. Before long, you're both covered in dirt, but the pig enjoys every minute of it. The same principle applies here. Conflict feeds them because every emotional reaction keeps you connected to them. Whether you're defending yourself, explaining your motives, or trying to expose the truth, your attention continues fueling the very dynamic you're trying to escape. One of the hardest realities to accept is that the apology you're waiting for may never come. They may never admit what they did. They may never acknowledge the pain they caused. They may never accept responsibility in the way your heart desperately hopes they will. Accepting that truth isn't giving up. It's setting yourself free. Stop writing long messages hoping they'll finally understand. Stop feeling obligated to defend every false accusation online or in endless conversations. Every explanation gives them more material to twist, misrepresent, or use against you later. Sometimes the strongest response is no response at all. Put the phone down. Step away from the argument. Refuse to keep participating in a game that was designed for you to lose. You don't defeat a skilled manipulator by becoming better at manipulation. You defeat them by refusing to play. Once you've walked away emotionally, your priorities begin to change. Instead of focusing on them, your attention returns to the one person who truly deserves it. You. Your healing becomes more important than their opinion. Your peace becomes more valuable than proving a point. Your future becomes more meaningful than revisiting the past. Many people imagine that revenge means exposing the narcissist or watching them experience the same pain they caused. but the most powerful outcome is much quieter than that. True victory is reaching the place where they no longer occupy your thoughts. It's building a life so full of purpose, joy, healthy relationships, and inner confidence that they become nothing more than a chapter you've already finished reading. Take every ounce of compassion you once poured into trying to rescue someone who never wanted to change, and redirect that kindness toward yourself. Reconnect with the interests you abandoned. Rediscover the dreams you postponed. Spend time with people who don't require you to constantly earn love or prove your worth. As you heal old emotional wounds, strengthen your self-respect, and break unhealthy relationship patterns, something remarkable begins to happen. The people you attract start changing.
Instead of relationships built on confusion and emotional instability, you naturally begin connecting with people who communicate honestly, respect your boundaries, and treat you with consistency. You no longer mistake manipulation for love, because you've learned the difference through experience. Perhaps the greatest gift hidden inside this painful journey is the wisdom it leaves behind.